choices. Everybody give him a round of applause. Seamus Mullen.
Thank you. I was going to say all sorts of other stuff, but then Saw was talking, and then we were zoning out and making friends, and Light was saying things, and so I'm just going to wing it a little bit because there's so much that's floating around in my head right now. But one thing that always strikes me, and I think about this all the time, is that this moment right now is a really, really special moment. And it's a moment when we're simultaneously becoming both the past and the future. Think about it, right now. Or now. Or now, or now, or now. And the decisions we make right now, the choices we make right now, well, they have absolutely no bearing on the past. We can't change what happened when I grabbed the microphone 20 seconds ago. I can't change that. But they have a profound effect on the future. It might not seem like something as small as seeing a picture of a dog named Juju, or giving someone a hug, that any of those things are going to have a huge effect on our future, but they might. And in their aggregate, they definitely will. I bumped into Light a couple weeks ago. When was it? Like a month ago in LA. I was on a bike ride and I stopped at a coffee shop afterwards, and we started talking, and I had just finished my book, and I was already thinking about my next book, and Light had just finished his book. And I've been trying to articulate this idea of the opposite of death by 1,000 cuts. Because really that's what I really believe in. And from a positive standpoint, what's health is really about the opposite of death by 1,000 cuts. And Light said, it's health by 1,000 choices. So he gave me the title of my next book, for which I'm very grateful. Thank you. Who here has had a near-death experience? Let's raise your hand. As Light mentioned, I've had a few of them. I had one last Wednesday. It's a pretty crazy experience. I was riding my bicycle into Las Vegas. I rode across the desert with a group of people for charity. And there's 5 of us going down a descent into Red Rocks in Nevada. And we were going about 52 miles an hour, and I was in the front. And there were 4 people behind me, and the people I was riding with were pro cyclists. They were really, really good cyclists. So we're flying down this highway, and we're on the shoulder, and there's the rumble strip, cruising, having an amazing, seeing God experience. And in this moment, a car coming up the mountain just crosses over right to make a turn in front of us with no turn signal, nothing. And it just crosses over like this. And in an instant, I just reacted, and I went across the rumble strip, and I did a little body English, and I went around the car. Didn't have any time to get scared. But everyone behind me saw it, and I came within 3 inches of hitting the car. And if I had hit the car, everyone behind me would have hit me or hit the car, and it would have been curtains for all of us. We would have been done. And after that, I realized I started to get scared, and I had panicked, and I had to take a beat and stop and get off the bike. But in that moment, there was no fear. There was just lucid clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do in that moment. I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to get around that car. I had to make sure that I didn't die. And I had to keep going, and I did it, and it was an amazing experience. About 6 years ago, I had another near-death experience, and this is probably one of the most profound things that's ever happened to me. I was very, very sick. I was in the ICU with a fever of 106 degrees for 12 hours. They're trying to bring my fever down, and in that, I had an infection in my brain. In that moment, I heard all these beeps and buzzes and noises. There I am. Didn't look very good. And I got to a point in that moment where I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm done. I am done. And when I said that to myself, there was like this celestial light that kind of showed up, and things got really easy all of a sudden. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go there. There's honey. I'm going to that light. It's going to be really nice. And I started floating up towards it, and I was giving up. I was dying. It was a really bizarre experience. And as I got closer and closer to the light, the noise of the room got more and more faint, and I got more and more comfortable in that experience of going towards the light. And then suddenly I said, no, I am not ready to go. I'm not ready to die. I got to get back to my job. I got to get back to my friends. I got to get back to my family. I got to get back to myself. I got to change something in my life. I got to make a difference in where I'm going right now. And so I started crawling back down away from that light, and I did, and I pulled myself. It was a very physical experience. I actually remember feeling exhausted in this moment, this weird, bizarre moment I was in. And the noises got louder and louder, and I came back to the room. And then eventually the next day, and obviously I didn't die. Maybe I did, but I'm here now. I pulled a Jon Snow on y'all, and I'm back. And the next day the doctor came in and said, "We almost lost you last night." I said, "I know, I was there. I remember very well. I remember very, very well." So in that moment of nearly dying, there was this moment of lucidity that said, something has to change in your life. Something has to change in your life. So I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how I was going to change it, but I knew that something had to change. And there's a really great proverb, a Buddhist proverb that says, "When you're ready, a teacher appears." And I was lucky shortly thereafter to meet a really wonderful teacher who really helped me. But how did I get to that point? How did I end up in the ICU? Well, it was accumulation of thousands, maybe millions, maybe tens of millions of decisions that got me to that point. I didn't wake up one day like that. I didn't wake up one day with 106-degree fever, suffering from an autoimmune disease. I didn't wake up one day on 17 different medications, on 2 injectables and 1 weekly transfusion. I didn't wake up like that. I didn't wake up 65 pounds overweight. It was the result of a slow and insidious march towards ill health, one that I didn't even realize was happening. And I didn't even realize that all of the choices I was making were getting me there. And that's why when Light was talking about the idea of the happiness that we're going to get to, that what did you call it, acquisitional happiness? Acquisitive approach to happiness. So yeah, that acquisitive approach to happiness, I didn't realize that that's actually what was happening with me. Like I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna address this tomorrow. I'm gonna take care of this tomorrow. And before I knew it, slowly I was experiencing death by 1,000 cuts. Has anyone here ever suffered from APS? No? I kind of doubt that. You guys don't even know what APS is, right? Oh, no wonder. Yeah, APS is Amazon Prime syndrome. Okay, can I get a, we're all guilty of it. Everybody put your hands up, because everybody has a little rectangular device that has something incredibly interesting inside that we're always looking at. We're all guilty of APS. We want what we want, and we want it right now, and if we don't get it now, we don't get it. It used to be if you didn't get it by the end of the week. Now it's if you didn't get it in 2 days, or then it was in 2 days, and now it's if you don't get it today, we're really pissed off. It's for free, exactly. We're entitled to getting whatever this product is, or in the case of our health, we're entitled to getting our health tomorrow because Amazon Prime syndrome tells us we can, because we live in a society that rewards us with treats immediately when we ask for them or when we pay for them. And I was really stuck in that same rut. I was sick. I was living with an autoimmune disease. I was inflamed all the time. And I would ask myself, why me? Why the fuck am I sick? I didn't deserve this. I don't deserve to wake up in the morning with my hands so swollen I can't tie my laces, that I can't button my shirt, that I've got to wear clogs because I'm too embarrassed to admit that I can't tie my laces or to ask help for tying my laces. Why me? I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. I used to be healthy. I used to be fit. I used to be athletic. I don't deserve this. So I'd go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, well, you have rheumatoid arthritis, and there are a lot of great drugs on the market now that we can use for treating that. And if this drug doesn't work, we'll use another one, and we'll try that. And if that doesn't work, we'll try something else. And along the way, without telling me, by the way, you're going to become addicted to drugs. They're going to become a part of your life. They're going to be a part of your chemistry. Your happiness, your dopamine, is going to be dependent upon those drugs. And if you don't have them, you're going to be really, really sick. On top of already being sick, you're going to be sick. So you're going to be sick to the sick degree. And I was like, yeah, you know what? This is not fair. Fix me. So I went to the doctor, and I asked the doctor to fix me over and over again. And the fix was never a fix. The fix was a Band-Aid. The fix wasn't really addressing what was causing the illness that I was living with. And I didn't realize that I was actually causing a part of the illness that I was living with. I didn't realize that there was a lot I could be doing to determine whether I was going to get sicker or healthier. So when you're ready, a teacher appears. I was really lucky to meet a guy who, some of you probably know him. His name is Dr. Frank Lippman. He's a doctor of functional medicine. He's trained in Western medicine, but over the years he became disillusioned with allopathic medicine and the treatment of symptoms, and really started to focus on whatever modality would help a patient get better, not get to a symptomatic management state, but actually get better, address the root cause of an illness. So I met Frank, and Frank is he's a very straightforward guy and loves to swear. And I met him in his office, and he sat across from me, and he looked at me, and he put his arms on his desk. He said, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" God, what do you mean? And every doctor I'd seen before had a, albeit nicer bedside manner, but wasn't as straight to the point as Frank was. And he said, listen, he could see that there was something wrong with me, and he knew that I wanted to get better because I had sought him out, or actually hadn't even sought him out. He just sort of appeared in my life through at a dinner. Someone introduced us, and he saw me, and he knew that I could get better. But was remarkable about my relationship with Frank, which has evolved into a really, really beautiful friendship, and somebody that I love very much and care for very much. What was remarkable about Frank is that he took the ego out of the equation of working with me. He wasn't like, I'm gonna fix you or we're gonna use some drugs. He said, you can get better, but you have to do the work. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm going to guide you a little bit. I'm going to help you a little bit. I'm going to share what I've learned and what I know. There's going to be a lot that I don't know, but you got to do all the work. And while that may seem daunting, that did two things to me. It gave me hope because it was something no doctor ever gave me before. It gave me hope that I could actually get better because he actually had the stones to put him down the line and say, you're going to get better. No doctor would say that to me. And two, it forced me to take responsibility for my own health. And in that moment that I took responsibility for my own health, I stopped being sick. And there's a really crucial moment if you're struggling with illness, there's a really crucial moment where you have to decide whether you are a sick person or you have a sickness. Whether you want to be defined by that illness or whether you want to understand who you are in the context of living with an illness and know that there's so much that you can do to affect the trajectory of that illness. And so Frank encouraged me to throw myself into it. And because I was able to kind of embrace that as I am not going to be a sick person, I'm going to take charge of my health, it was hugely empowering. I went from feeling very stripped of any kind of autonomy over my health. I went from feeling like I was really at the will or at the mercy of the medical community to feeling like I actually could drive this bus. I could take control of the ship, and there's a lot that I could do. And so we started with a combination of Western medicine and herbs and acupuncture and meditation and yoga and slowly exercise and food. Because guess what? That's actually what I knew a lot about. I had an amazingly, amazingly brilliant grandmother who said to me things that I'm sure everyone has heard and everyone's grandmother has said to you, like you are what you eat. But she also said you have to eat a peck of dirt before you die and trust your gut and all of these things. So she knew somehow, like almost every traditional culture around the world knows, that the things we put into our mouth and into our bodies become us. And I was a professional chef. I am a professional chef. I've spent my entire professional career cooking food. I didn't realize that I had the tools to actually affect my health right in front of me. I had a really rare skill set. I had the ability to understand how to make food, and I had the curiosity of a chef to learn about food to impact how it would affect my health. And I had that right there, but I never realized that as chefs we're really, really good at taking care of other people, but we're terrible at taking care of ourselves. Every role model I had growing up in the kitchen was overweight, did a ton of cocaine, drank a lot of alcohol, worked all the time, ate their meals out of quart containers standing up, never had a proper meal, never really took care of themselves, and certainly did not exercise. And they yelled and screamed, and they threw pots and pans and broke plates and did all of that stuff too. So I didn't have a model of the idea of I could embrace food as a positive thing, as a healing element. To me, it was always just a career. It was what I did. It wasn't what I was doing to myself. And in that moment with Frank, when I stopped being a sick person, when I stopped being a patient, and I started being the person on the road to becoming a healthy person, I changed the way I thought about food. And it was a long journey. And along that journey, I learned a lot about food, and I learned a lot about how food impacted my body and my relationship with food. But that's something that I think the most important thing I started to learn was that I actually really needed to love foods that loved me back. That this idea of so-called comfort foods, so many of these comfort foods are actually making me really uncomfortable. They were really fucking with me. They were fucking with my guts. They were fucking with my gut flora. Yes, there is a total connection between the brain and the gut. Yes, there is a total connection between the hormones that are produced in our gut and the foods that we eat. Yes, there's a total connection between the foods that we eat and the populations of bacteria that live in and on us. And we can make very, very conscious decisions about how we can impact those communities that live on us and live in us. We're a part of a community. The moment we're born, we become part of an incredible community that's our own internal community. And we have choices about what that community looks like. And so many things in the world that we live in now, I think of it as like this Purellification of the world. I mean, I see people walking down the street. The other day I saw a woman who was in the subway and she had a Purell thing dangling off of her backpack. And the cap broke and she was like talking to someone and going like that and spraying Purell all over the place. And then she was like, "What happened?" And I saw her. I was like, "You know, your thing broke." And she got all upset and she took it off and she threw it in the garbage. And I said, "That was the best thing you just did for yourself all day long. That was the best thing you could do." We live in this overly sanitized world that really has created an antagonistic relationship with bacteria for a really long time. And it's not to say that we should all go bathe in C. diff and die, but I think it's important to understand that bacteria and the foods that we eat have a tremendous and direct impact on our well-being and on our health. So all these little decisions that we make, you know, when I was really sick and I had horrific inflammation in my hands and I was dealing with joint inflammation in my shoulders, I'd get home from work after struggling through a long day of work, and all I wanted to do was to feel some sort of joy. So I'd find joy in a pint of ice cream and a bottle of wine. Because if I drank a green smoothie, I was still going to feel like absolute dog shit. I wasn't going to feel any better. Maybe I'd think I'd feel a little bit better, but I wasn't going to feel any better. If you have a severe flare-up, if you have a severe RA flare-up or Crohn's flare-up or an MS flare-up, no amount of curcumin, no amount of healthy food is going to have the same impact that prednisone is going to have on you in that moment. So the point is to get your life to a point in which you're never in an acute flare-up, to where you're taking care of yourself, to where you're maintaining. It's so much harder to put out a fire than it is to make sure that a fire never starts. So I learned through my life with food and redeveloping a positive relationship with food, getting away from that idea of a diet, because a diet is really, a diet is just like APS. A diet is adopting a short-term relationship with food that has a beginning and an end, with the hope that that is going to have lifelong effects on your body and your health. So I got rid of that idea of a diet, and I started to think of how do I relate to food? And I started to love foods that loved me back, and slowly over time, as I started to feel better, I realized that the foods that I loved before that weren't loving me back, I stopped looking at them as foods. I stopped even thinking of them as foods. And I stopped craving them and I stopped wanting them because there was this reality and this memory of how crappy I used to feel. So I was really, really fortunate to have met Frank, and I owe him a debt of gratitude, and the people around me, my friends, my family, who are incredibly supportive. And I discovered in this journey that, we often talk about disease being contagious, but I discovered in this journey that health is actually even more contagious than disease, that it's more addictive than being a victim is. When you start to feel better after feeling numb or after feeling chronic pain for such a long period of time, you want to feel even more better. You want to see how much better you can feel. You want to see how good you can feel. You want to make sure that you don't ever go back to feeling like crap again. You want to continue to push yourself forward. And then the people around you, initially maybe it's because they feel like they might be judged by you if they're drinking a Diet Pepsi when you're drinking coconut water or whatever it might be. But then slowly they might be curious and want to try that coconut water or just try the water and give up the Diet Pepsi, and next thing you know, they're running or they quit smoking or they're doing things as well because they've seen the impact it has on your health. And I've watched initially my circle of close friends and family change the way they eat and then change and their health start to change. But then I saw the people in my restaurants start to be affected by being in the same space as I was. And then I started to see my greater community. And I'm so proud to see so many of my colleagues, chefs, change in the past few years, change the stereotype of what it means to be a chef in New York City. They don't go out anymore. So many of them have gotten into exercise and taking care of themselves, and there's been this incredible movement because we work in an industry that is very, very, very hard on our bodies, and it's just not sustainable to party every night and to abuse your body. Eventually your body says uncle and it's not going to do it anymore. So it's been to me, a very fulfilling and incredibly inspiring journey to watch the people around me start to change their lives too, and to see how positively infectious health can be. And next week, I helped start 3 years ago a division of No Kid Hungry called Chef Cycle. And we started riding our bikes with the idea of raising some money to end childhood hunger in the US, which is a completely solvable problem in the US. So our first ride 3 years ago, we rode from New York to DC, 300 miles in 3 days, and it was a small group of us, and we raised about $20,000, something like that, to end childhood hunger. And each dollar equates to 10 meals. And then last year, we went from a handful of chefs to about 120 chefs. We got 120 chefs on bikes to do the same thing. And we rode in California, and we raised $1 million. And next week, in California, we have nearly 300 chefs. And the majority of these chefs are people that had never ridden bicycles before this year. But we got them on bikes. We created a training program so they could get into shape. And next week, we have 285 chefs that are riding 300 miles in 3 days. And we've raised $2 million to end childhood hunger in the US. And well, that's an incredibly important and noble cause to me, because I think it is a right for every child in anywhere in the world, but particularly in a country that has the resources that we have, to have access to healthy food. It's also incredibly important to me to see how this has changed the lives of the 300 chefs that are doing this ride, because the majority of them, I've watched so many lose weight. I've watched so many of them quit smoking, stop drinking, eating well, getting on a training regimen, and completely change their lives and become ambassadors for health in their own restaurants and in their own small communities that they represent. And that, to me, is the power of the infectious ability that health and food has to change lives and to change communities. So I've been really, really lucky. And after working with Frank, it took a while for me to feel better. And he said, it's going to take like 6 months for you to feel better. I guarantee you, it'll take at least 6 months, and you're going to feel somewhere between 5 and 95% better. And the reality is that I would have been totally stoked with 5% better, because 5% better than crap was going to be like crap plus 5. It was going to be okay. But I didn't feel any better for 6 months. I did not. In fact, I felt worse for a long time. And then we kept tweaking things, and I just stuck with it because he kept telling me, you're going to feel better. And having somebody give you that arm around your shoulder and tell you it's going to be okay, you're going to feel better, enabled me to really to trust myself and to trust the process. And then one day, 6 months later, nearly 6 months to the day, I woke up and I walked down the stairs. I had a spiral staircase in my apartment. I got halfway down the stairs and I realized that I wasn't walking one step at a time, but I was actually walking like a normal human being. And suddenly I started laughing and then crying and then laughing. And I wasn't sure if I was laughing or crying, but I realized that I wasn't in pain. And it was the first time in 11 years that I hadn't been in pain. I'd become so used to just living in pain all the time that I forgot what it was like not to be in pain. And suddenly not to be in pain became this remarkable, just incredible state of euphoria. And so I did what any sensible person would do. I grabbed my old bicycle, because I used to race bikes, and bikes were always my happy place. They always made me smile. And I got on my bike and I rode 6 miles. And they were the hardest 6 miles I've ever ridden, but I was so happy. And the next day I rode 7 miles, and then 8 miles, and then 9 miles, and pretty soon 100 miles. And next thing I knew, I was feeling good. And the better I felt, the better I felt. It was like being on a bike. The further you go, the further you go. And a year after working with Frank, there were no longer any signs in my bloods, no biomarkers for rheumatoid arthritis, which is an incurable disease by definition. So there were no signs for it. In fact, even my rheumatoid factor, which had been positive, was now negative. And I was off of all the medication that I'd been on. It took a year, and in some ways, I'm an anomaly, but in many ways, I'm not. What I had was a lot of discipline. And I had the discipline partly from having been an athlete when I was younger, partly from growing up in the kitchen and working in the kitchen, which is a very almost militaristic brigade, but mostly because I had this incredible desire never to feel pain anymore, because I'd lived through such horrible experience for years that I lost all of my 30s. I lost that whole decade. And I wanted it back. And I was going to work really hard to make sure that I got it back. And once I had a sense that I could get it back, then I stuck to it. So the one thing I want to leave you guys with, and I want you all to think about, is that it's not about any one decision we make. And it's not like any decision we make is really going to, it's not that if you decide to have a donut today, that doesn't mean you're going to get cancer tomorrow. And it doesn't mean you're going to get cancer in 15 years. And if you have that donut and it makes you really happy and you're with somebody that you really care about and you're creating a moment that you'll remember for a really long time, eat the fucking donut. It's not going to kill you. But remember that if the donut becomes the everyday, then you are going to die from cancer or something. Or you're going to be more likely to. Or you're just going to make it harder on your body to be healthy, because our bodies all want to be healthy. And our job, now that we're supposedly smart creatures, is to get out of the way of nature. We need to get out of the way and let our bodies do what our bodies want to do. So every little decision we make adds up to whether we're healthy, whether we're happy, or whether we're not. And think about those things. Just think about the choices you make on a daily basis, the small choices. And they're really about just making very, very small choices. But they all can have a direct impact. And the amazing thing about those small choices is that when they're good, positive choices that are taking care of yourself, they snowball. And then you want to make more and more and more. And suddenly the stakes are higher. And you realize you've done all this great work. Why ruin it? And so the value of that donut, you might think, well, you know what, maybe I'm not going to have that donut, but I'm still going to meet my friend and we're going to do something else. And we're going to share a different moment. So instead of going to the bar, we're going to go for a run. And you start to replace some of the decisions that could end up being in the cumulative, could be negative, with things that cumulatively could be positive. So think about that. Health by 1,000 choices. Thank you guys very much.